I truly believe that there's a lot of meaning to be had from our careers, but I think we need better support structures and more modern tools to enable people to discover what fulfillment means for them and design those fulfilling careers.
Hello, and welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to unraveling the journey of being authentic in the workplace. I'm your host, Sania Sadakar, and this is another episode in our Career Questions series. Now, we're often told to own our own career path. You may have heard this before from a manager or a leader at your company. So, what does this mean, and how can you do it? Today, we're going to dive into just that. My guest today is Mollie Amkraut Mueller. She's a founder and CEO of Crew, a company that's helping people design more fulfilling careers. Mollie and I are going to talk all about developing your career proactively by knowing yourself and taking action to move yourself closer to a career that's aligned to you, one small step at a time. Now, we're going to focus a lot on how you can grow in your career, even within the company that you currently work for. This episode is great for anyone who doesn't love their current role, but doesn't want to quit their job or leave their company. And it's also great for those of you who feel like things are going well career-wise, but maybe that good could be great. We'll share some ways to find opportunities for growth right where you are. Let's get into it. Hey, Mollie, welcome to Working Your Way. I'm really excited to have you on.
Hey, Sandhya, I'm so excited to be here.
So today we're going to talk about career design and maybe a little more specifically, how people can work with their current jobs to make them work better for them. And so I'm super excited about this topic because I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Clearly, Working Your Way is just that. It's like, how do we make our careers work better for us? But when you're in a corporate setting, oftentimes it can kind of feel like you don't have a lot of ownership or say or a lot of flexibility in the work that you're doing. And I think it's really important to talk about what are the ways that we can actually work with the jobs that we have and make them work better for us. So I'm super excited to have you on and talk about this topic. And I want to start out a little bit with, tell me about your career journey and what were some of the steps that led you to starting Crew?
You know, it's one of those stories where it kind of feels like my whole career has led up to starting this company, even though I didn't know it at the time. I have been strangely obsessed with career strategy from a very young age. So in college, I double majored in psychology and econ because I really loved the intersection of humans and business. And my favorite class was organizational psychology. I ended up writing my senior thesis on how to increase employee engagement in companies. And I worked at the campus career center as a student coach because of this interest. So been studying career strategy since then. Really, found a lot of fulfillment in helping my peers think through their careers, even at that young, tender age in college. But I also saw firsthand that campus career centers are typically quite under-resourced. And so they help people with some of the basics, like how to interview and how to create a resume, but they don't often have the resources internally to help with the really important stuff, like figuring out what you want from your career and how you tell your story. And so that stuck with me. Went off and did other things. I started my career as an accountant at Ernst & Young, and then went to business school, London Business School in London, and used business school to make a hard pivot into the creative space. And after business school, joined IDEO, the design thinking firm, where I learned how to design products and services and ventures that were really human-centered and really helped the user. And it was there that this career topic came front and center for me again, because even at this really human-centered company like IDEO, there wasn't great career development. There's so many bright, amazing colleagues who I loved working with, but I saw people getting frustrated and eventually leaving because they weren't getting great career coaching and they weren't getting the support they needed to figure out what their career path looked like internally. And this was frustrating for me on a personal level. It was frustrating because I was losing some of my amazing teammates. And I just got refascinated by this problem. And I started researching it, and I discovered certainly wasn't just IDEO, it's incredibly pervasive. Most organizations are not good at career development. In fact, it's usually the number one thing that comes back on engagement surveys is a lack of career development is what people are most frustrated by. And so that just felt like such a big, gnarly problem to solve. And I had had some really fantastic career development experiences along my career that I thought could be really helpful if we found a way to bring them to more people, including coaching and design thinking and the power of small peer groups. And so I started Crew because I truly believe that there's a lot of meaning to be had from our careers, but I think we need better support structures and more modern tools to enable people to discover what fulfillment means for them and design those fulfilling careers. And so Crew combines those three things I just mentioned into a scalable offer that can support employees with career development at all levels of an organization.
That's amazing. I think it's so interesting, as you mentioned, right? Like career services or career placement offices or career coaching at a college level is so understaffed. And yet that's the point in our lives where we're making these huge monumental decisions about like what company we want to go work for, what we want to do with our life. And I've always found it fascinating that in high school, you have to decide what college you want to go to based on what major you want to do. And how are we supposed to know these things about ourselves at such a young age? But what strikes me about your career path is that not only did you kind of have this like deep rooted kind of understanding of career and how to build a career, but then going into accounting first, where it's almost like the most linear, the most kind of like org structure boxed in career path, where it's like there's really the least amount of flexibility possibly in like what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. And so it's like going kind of having that experience, I'm sure, informed kind of your approach in some way.
It really did. When I was in accounting, I was at Ernst & Young and, in this very linear path. And I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't the right fit for me. I loved the firm, but I just didn't love accounting. But I was actually contracted to stay because they had paid for my master's degree. And what that did is it forced me to do some career designing inside my organization from very early in my career. I couldn't leave. I would have to owe them a lot of money. And so I got creative and I started networking internally and exploring different groups within the firm. And I ended up doing an internal transfer to the business development team where I did strategy and account management and loved it. And that was really rare, actually, that people switched groups within the firm. And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of conversations. It took a lot of time. But it showed me that if I did commit that time and energy and used, my networking, I could figure out a different path, even when I thought I was stuck.
I'm curious, what were the things that you were feeling, experiencing, thinking during that time where it was probably very uncommon for someone to say like, oh, I'm going to empower myself to go ask these questions, to go figure these possible solutions out. What was happening inside of you as you were going through that experience?
That's a great question. A few things. I think one is I was learning the power of using the people around me. So I just started getting curious and having conversations with people in different groups. And at first that felt a little scary. I was a little scared to ask people for their time. I was asking strangers. But what I learned is people are really happy to have conversations with you, especially when they get to talk about themselves in their work. Who doesn't love that? And so I was gaining confidence in using that skill of speaking to people and, using my curiosity to learn about these other roles. And from that, I was also reminded that people really love helping. And so not only were they having conversations with me, but, the couple times that it really sparked an interest and I thought, oh, wow, I could see myself in this role. They were going above and beyond to help me explore ways to do that transfer. And so I was it was really this awakening to there are a lot of resources and helpful people out there if you just start getting curious and asking questions.
I love that. Following your curiosity, but also like getting yourself over that tiny initial hump of like, this feels scary, but I'm just going to start talking to people. And then seeing how like, oh, wow, there's this whole world of people who want to help me out. So I really love that. I think it was an ancient philosopher that said, necessity is the mother of invention. Mollie was contracted to stay at her firm, but she knew the work she was doing wasn't the right fit. So she couldn't leave, but she got innovative. This really forced her to get over the discomfort of asking people for help as she figured out how she wanted to move forward. Now, when you have this extra nudge to make you get out of your comfort zone, it might help. But the anxiety that we feel around asking for people's time in other circumstances might often be a barrier to exploring. We might think we need to have all the answers or that people are too busy and don't have time for a conversation. Now, that may be true to some extent, but I think the intent and the tone matter a lot here. If you're approaching someone with a genuine interest and specific help that you're looking for, more often than not, the answer will be yes. Now, if you email someone out of the blue with a very general, hey, I want to get to know you, or I want to pick your brain kind of request, sometimes people won't see the value in it. But when the value, even if it's value just to you, is very clear and you approach it authentically, I think you'll be surprised at how willing people are to share their wisdom and their expertise. It makes me think of a story from the very beginning of my career. I was a new hire at a big corporation, and this was our first big meeting where they were all the new people together. And we had this big town hall type meeting with the president of our function. Now, there were hundreds of new hires there in the room, and this leader was maybe 5 levels up or 6 levels up. So our boss's 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 boss. I mean, it was somebody that was quite important to the company. And one of the new hires stood up to ask a question, and he asked this leader to be his mentor. And people were appalled at the audacity. This brand new hire is asking the president of a division, someone he's never met before, didn't have a personal relationship with him, and for a relationship that's really more about that person giving you something than you giving them something. Now, this, in my opinion, is an inappropriate ask. To me, it shows a lack of respect for this leader's time. This guy just started in his job, and so he didn't even really know what type of mentorship that he needed yet. And is asking this president-level executive to spend his time and energy getting to know him before he's even spent a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a couple of years delivering results for the division. This was the type of blanket help request that I think feels kind of selfish and disingenuous. There really wasn't something specific that new hire knew he needed from this particular person. He hadn't even built relationships yet with his own manager, the leader of his own team, and he wanted to jump the chain all the way up. It felt like an empty ask, and it felt like an ask just to be close to someone in power, not a request for help that had genuine intention behind it. Now, my point here is this. You asking someone in another division or even at a higher level to share their perspective on something you're considering or some specific questions that you have relating to your career path, this is not wasting or disrespecting someone's time. Get clear on what you want to know and why this person would be a good resource for that. And I would say don't spend someone else's time asking questions that you could easily Google or learn the answers to. Do your own learning, understand what you don't know, what you want to learn from the specific person, and then reach out and share your genuine interest. You shouldn't feel like you have to figure it all out by yourself, but there are some ways to ensure that you're being respectful of that person's time. Okay, let's get back to Mollie, where she talks about this self-exploration, the me search, that you can do to get more specific about what you want to learn. What I'd love to hear a little bit about is you had community is a big part of Crew, which we're going to talk about collaboration and having kind of this network of people to bounce ideas off of. But you had your own experience, I know, with a career coach or with coaching that has also informed that element of the work that you do today. So what was it like for you, or what were your experiences with coaching along the way?
Yeah. So when I was in business school, I came in not really knowing what I wanted to do after. I knew I wanted to do something very different from accounting. I had maybe a couple inklings, but I needed help finding my direction. And I worked with a fantastic career coach in the business school who really forced me to take several steps back before jumping into the couple career paths that I was considering. So she gave me the tools and the guidance to take a few steps back and do what we call it crew the me search to understand what are my strengths, what are my interests, when am I at my best, where could I see myself, what drives me. And through doing that work with her, I was able to unpack, what I was interested in doing, what some of my strengths were that I was okay to leave behind. And then once I had that solid understanding of what I wanted for, the research into different career paths became much easier. And I was better able to tell my story when I had more of these coffee chat conversations with people about their career paths.
I imagine that as you're having these coffee chats, even just, I don't know, everybody processes differently, but for me, verbalizing something or just like speaking it out loud or what I'm curious about or describing myself to people helps me process a lot. So was that something that for you kind of brought a little bit of clarity as well?
100%. So the way I figured out that I wanted to work in design consulting is I originally thought that I wanted to work at startups, at early stage startups after business school. And what I had worked on with my coach and kind of the job I was thinking about, or, the vague definition was I wanted to bring new technology to market in human centered ways. And that's what I went into these coffee chats, talking to people about and saying, these are my interests and here are my strengths. I want to work with new technology, but I want to apply it in human centered ways. And basically everyone in coffee chat started saying the same thing. They said, okay, that's really great, really helpful. You're looking in the wrong place because startups, while innovative and exciting, they don't have time to let you ponder how to bring their new technology to market in human-centered ways. They've already done that. That was their founding idea. They're not going to hire an MBA to do that for them. Have you thought about design consulting? And I had never really thought about design consulting. I barely knew what design thinking was at that point, but it was from those coffee chats that people started telling me about design thinking, about firms like IDEO, which piqued my curiosity even more, led me to research the space, and eventually discover that this was a much better path than joining an early stage startup.
That's so great. Having that reflected back to you, I'm sure was like very pivotal for the choices that you made.
Yep, it was the thing.
Yeah. So as you were starting Crew, what was the kind of big problem you were seeing that led you to create what has evolved into what it is today?
The big problem is that careers have become much more squiggly and complex, right? You're familiar with this. I know most people are learning this, that careers used to be more of a ladder, and today we call them squiggly. Some people call them a jungle gym. But career support structures haven't kept up. And what that leads to is a lot of people getting really frustrated because they expect a linear career path, or they know that they can't expect that, but they don't have the tools and the guidance to help them navigate that. And it's really hard, right? It's hard to know what you want from a career without getting good coaching and guidance. And once you do know, it's hard to go get that. You need confidence, you need a lot of helpful people, you need concrete steps, and most people need a structured path to follow. And most people don't have that anywhere. They think they should get that from their company. They think they should get that from their managers, but managers aren't trained in career development, and most of them didn't have great career development themselves. So they're not able to perform that really important role. And so I just saw this huge gap in providing modern, structured career development support. And that's what I set out to solve.
That is such an important point that you bring up about people are going to look to their managers and they should look to their managers. And yet we don't really equip managers in companies around career development outside of maybe here's your performance review and here are the skills or the KSAs you need to get to this level. Like, let's work on those, right? It is they are equipped to do it, but in a very linear way and not in a way that's like a coaching way, or asking the deeper questions or questioning is this next step even right for the person that's there? And so it brings me to this idea of like, I was always told at P&G, where I started my corporate career, like you own your career. And to some extent, I think there was probably a little more flexibility in what I was doing there around choosing different locations and different types of roles and things like that. My particular pillar of P&G was a bit more of a matrix than kind of a linear path. But that idea that you own your career is one that is said a lot, but maybe not felt. And one of the things you talk about at Crew as a kind of main philosophy is like, how do you empower individuals to kind of take that control of their career or find that ownership?
That's exactly right. That is what we do at Crew. And that's why design thinking is such a powerful model, because it's all about taking ownership. Before I dig into that, I just want to pick up on what you were saying about managers, if that's all right. I think just a moment for empathy for managers, because managers are not trained in career development. Managers are undertrained and overburdened, right? They're incredibly busy people. Most managers really want to be great career coaches. They want to develop their people. They want to help them have fulfilling careers. Everyone wants to do that. It's fulfilling to ourselves to enable other people. But as I said, they don't have the time, they don't have the training, and their jobs are made much harder when individuals don't have clarity on their own career. And that's why a coaching mindset is now so important for managers, because they have to help the individuals tease that out. But to your point, careers are owned by individuals, and our employers and managers and mentors are there to support us and guide us, but it's up to the individual to take ownership. And that's actually the biggest mistake I see people making in careers, is delegating that ownership or assuming that they can leave that up to their employer or their manager. And so to answer your question, as you said, our philosophy is that individuals own their careers, and design thinking is a really powerful, structured process that helps people take ownership by going through specific steps that first start with self-reflection and understanding who they are and what they want from work, and then taking action.
I love that. And so let's pause for a second here. What is design thinking? For anyone who's not familiar with it, how is it different from regular thinking or regular design?
Design thinking is a creative approach to problem solving. It's human-centered, it's iterative, it's experimental, it's very creative, and it's collaborative. Its roots are in traditional product design, and what the originators of design thinking, which my old company IDEA was a big part of, took the principles of product design and applied it to a wide variety of challenges, anything from building a new company to organizational design, systemic design, building new products and new services. And it's become this really powerful method because it enables individuals to get creative and solve problems in a less linear, more human-centered way.
So I dabbled a little bit in design thinking in my master's program. And as somebody who I would say I'm a pretty focused, kind of linear, structured thinker, and someone who likes to get to the objective and the goal quickly. For me, design thinking was, it was challenging my natural way of doing things, in a sense of like, we spent a lot of time defining the problem, right? Really thinking about like, what are we solving for here? And then a lot more time in ideation. And then when you get into the experimentation phase, that's not something that we often, I think about in our own lives. That's something that maybe, companies will think about if they're kind of in an agile type of a mindset. But when we make career decisions as people, as individuals, it feels so huge. And it feels like I need to make this one big decision and I have to get it perfect, instead of this idea of let's try a little thing and iterate and try another little thing and iterate. And so I think that mentality or that mindset, bringing that to our careers it can be so powerful in so many ways.
It's so true. Everything can be prototyped, including careers. And so part of our process, once you've done the me search and done the self-reflection and then asked some open-ended questions and done some brainstorming, we move into prototyping and help people think of small ways that they can test new things that they want to do before jumping ship and quitting their day job, which is a very big, often risky change.
Yeah. So let's talk about those different pieces of the model and how you all use design thinking and career design at Crew. So lay out for us, what are the pieces?
Okay. So we often talk about it in a 4-staged approach. And the first half of that is, we think of it as know thyself. And so we start with this phase I've mentioned, me search. And this is a group of activities that help us to be self-reflective and identify our strengths, our interests, our motivators, our boundaries, all of the ingredients that will help us to make choices that lead to a meaningful, fulfilling career. So, for example, at Crew, we have an activity that is called Highlight Reel, and we get people to create a visual collection of the things that they are proud of in their career and their life. And then we help them to analyze why they chose those things. And really, by asking coaching questions, dig deep into what it was about those highlights that made them feel so proud or so fulfilled. And those are the things that typically they're going to want more of in their career. So that's one example of a me search activity. Okay. Then we move into the second phase, which we call interpret, which is still part of know thyself, where we make meaning out of those things. So as I just said, with personal highlight reel, extracting those insights and, elevating the ones that are the most important to move forward. Then we move into the second phase of the process, which we call take action. And here we start with brainstorming. So we'll take those insights that we came up with. For example, I'm thriving and at my best when I have a lot of creativity in my work. And we'll turn that into an open-ended question, like, how might I bring more creativity into my job? And we use brainstorming and coffee chats and using our network and asking others for their ideas to come up with a lot of different ways that we can achieve that, bringing creativity into my career. And this is an important part because, traditionally our thinking can be quite linear. And so we'll only see one or maybe two options ahead of us in our job. But when we pause and do some brainstorming, we can come up with multiple ways that we can achieve what we want. Once we have a few of those ideas that we're excited to move forward with, we move into experimentation or prototyping. So that's where we take one of those ideas and find a small way that we can test if it's really what we want to do. So for example, one way to test, if you're interested in a new topic is to write about it. I think writing is a really great test to see if a topic holds your interest for longer than a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months. If you start writing about something and you're still curious about it after writing a few blog posts, then chances are that is something that you will sustain interest in. If you're not interested in it after doing the research, then good thing you didn't quit your day job to pursue that interest, because that's probably not going to last. So that's one example of a way to prototype a new career direction. And then finally, those are kind of the 4 stages, but the 5th we call storytelling, and it happens throughout the process. And it's taking all of these things that you're learning about yourself and about the opportunities that you're interested in and weaving them into a story that you can share with the people who are going to help you, which is often your manager or your teams or people at your company. They want to hear the why behind your ask. And so by having, more of the meat of this story and being able to tell that in a compelling way, it enables people to better help you.
Yeah, storytelling. I mean, even interviewing and things like that can be so important because we're making meaning of those things, right? And then tying them into results and things like that.
Exactly.
So one of my big passion areas is understanding yourself, right? And using different frameworks or tools or explorations or questions or journaling or prompts or, all these things, right? Coaching to understand what do we care about? What are we really good at? And then as it moves into the action phase, I love what you said about experimenting as like doing something in a small way. So like writing about a topic before you jump into that as your career. One thing that came to mind is like, okay, if I, within an organization, if I'm thinking about moving to a different division, as an example, maybe I'm in sales and I want to go into learning and development or human resources or something like that. If I want to experiment with learning and development, I could do something like maybe I volunteer to lead a training for our team or work with that department to own that on behalf of the team, right? So it's like these kind of stretch assignments that we might have in our corporate career that can actually help us in that experimentation phase. And so I feel like there's endless numbers of ideas when it comes to ways to experiment within your current job, but maybe I hadn't really framed it exactly as experimenting and prototyping.
It's so true. It could be anything from, a secondment into another division. It could be doing a project with another division. It could be a simple conversation with someone. Tell me about your job and how this team works. It could be shadowing someone in their job to better understand what their day-to-day looks like. It could be, just bringing a new activity into your own job. So, for example, when I was at IDEO, I learned that I really loved pitching. And I learned that a bit from getting some feedback from teams that they thought I was good at pitching and just, from doing little pieces of it. And I discovered that I loved it and it was really giving me a lot of energy. So I leaned into that and I started asking for more opportunities to pitch, like in our, end of project presentations. And people were happy to give me that experience. And by doing it more, I discovered that I liked it even more. I was able to strengthen that skill set. And that was a prototype. I wasn't making a big change. I was just kind of increasing my skill and opportunity to pitch a little bit more as with each project.
So within organizations, I think sometimes there can be this kind of mindset block for people around, well, why would my company care if I like to do this kind of work? Or this is the kind of, I want to do more of this part of my job. And it's very clear, like in your example, pitching to clients is business critical for the company that you were in, right? In a consulting space. And so I think it's underestimated or maybe just kind of a forgotten part of this, that when we can align what we do with the stuff that we love to do and the stuff that we do well, there is inherently a business benefit for the company. And so getting over that mindset block of like, well, why would my company care about what I want to do? It's like, there's a benefit. It's a win-win, right? And really thinking about it in a different sense.
This is a really important point that I don't think we spend enough time on. I think of it as a Venn diagram with two circles. There's what I like doing and what I'm good at, and there's what my company needs me to do. And those two circles overlap, but I think we underestimate how much overlap there can be because we don't take the time to investigate everything that we are good at and what we want to do and how we can do that in our company. The truth is no one likes job hunting, right? No one wants to quit their job. That's a huge burden and it's emotionally challenging. No one wants that. And companies want to retain people. And so if we can just, do even a little bit of work to help people find more of the overlap, then companies get to retain, people are happier, they're doing more of the work that they love, they're performing better because they're engaging more of their strengths and doing the work that they love. So there's a huge win-win here that doesn't even take that much investment.
I want to pause here for a second and talk about this win-win idea. The Venn diagram of what you love to do and what the company needs. And where do these two things overlap? And as Mollie mentioned, the overlap is probably a lot bigger than you think. For example, if you are in sales and you're interested in finance and accounting, maybe there's a big sales budget project that you could be included in, or being the lead point of contact for an internal audit of the sales organization. Chances are those projects would run more smoothly if there was someone on the team representing sales who intimately understands the day-to-day work. Or another example, maybe you love speaking and presenting, or you want to be more creative in your role, but you work in a project management position and you don't really get to do that type of stuff in your daily work. What if you volunteered to lead a company offsite or MC a panel at an event? Your passion is going to make that event even more engaging than it might have been. Now, in both of these examples, this gives someone a chance to learn and explore a new area because you're owning work that someone else might have to do and you're excited about it. So you're probably going to deliver it in a really high quality way. When we do things that we love, we can excel in those areas, and it's always a benefit to the company to have someone do those things well. The important takeaway here is don't make assumptions. Don't talk yourself out of something that could be a really great win-win for both you and the company because you don't think that they would say yes. Always ask the question, bring the request forward, and remember to frame it in a way that shows how it would help you in your career development and how it benefits the business too. So talk a little bit about these kind of the two major phases, and then I want to talk about storytelling a little bit more, but the two major parts of the know thyself and take action. What are some of the watch outs? If someone wants to kind of go and say, okay, I'm going to, whether through a crew or with a coach or on their own, explore myself and get to know myself better and understand what I want out of work. What are some watch outs that you would say they should look for?
So when I think of those two phases, I think there's two big watch outs. The first is you can get stuck in that first half, know thyself, and get into some analysis paralysis. So of course it's important to be self-reflective and to do that work. But if you don't couple that with the take action phase, then you can, go into a bit of a spiral. So make sure that you are doing the self-reflection work, but make sure that you're also then moving into ideation and prototyping so that you're really learning in the real world. The second pitfall is that you move into take action way too fast. So you skip the self-reflection and you jump for the opportunity that presents itself to you. And while this might seem easier and faster, it often ends up in you choosing something that isn't a good fit and is going to lead to you being unhappy and not performing your best. And so the way that you can combat that is to do that self-reflection piece at the beginning. One great way to make sure that you are doing both of these parts of the process in a healthy way is to enlist the help of other people. So design thinking and career design are inherently collaborative. And as you've touched on, a big part of our ethos at Crew is that careers are a team sport. And so a great way to make sure that you're not getting stuck in analysis paralysis, but you're not jumping too quickly into the new thing is to get the help of a coach or mentors or peers who can help guide you through that process, ask you coaching questions, and help you extract insights that will be really useful in that career design.
It sounds like it's important to balance the know thyself and the take action, but is it a linear process? You have to do all of one and then move into the other, or do you kind of bounce back and forth between the two?
You can definitely bounce back and forth. And, sometimes you can get to the quote end of the linear process and realize that, you're prototyping the wrong thing, right? That's the point of a prototype. You discover that that's not the right path for you. And maybe you need to go back a few phases and do some more thinking or some more brainstorming and then some more experimentation. So with design thinking, we think of it as, you're going through these phases, but you're constantly circling back and checking in and taking what you've learned from brainstorming or prototyping and bringing it back into your know thyself phase to crystallize those insights that you had started to develop.
Great. I love that. Yeah, it's kind of a learn something, try something, go back to the learning phase, try something new. And then what role does storytelling play in all of it? You touched on it a little bit, but can you expand on how should we think about storytelling, especially when it comes to like a corporate career?
Storytelling is the way that humans communicate. And sometimes we forget how important it is in a work setting or when it comes to our career development. Humans love hearing stories, it's how we make sense of the world. And so when you are communicating who you are, what you're looking for what you're looking for in your career, and the opportunities that you're interested in, if you can tell that in a compelling story that makes sense and helps people to connect with you, they're going to understand it better and they're going to be more inspired to help you with your career. So using, tools like we have a simple construct at Crew, where I've been, where I am now, and where I'm headed. That's, one of the simplest ways to think about telling your story in a way that helps people understand the journey that you've been on and includes that future facing aspect so that you're giving them a concrete way that they can think about helping you.
Storytelling can be, it's to me, it's sometimes this kind of intimidating or daunting kind of concept. And then when you break it down to like what it actually looks like, even in leadership or in interviewing or in asking people for help or asking for something from your company, it's just tying it back to your own experience and making meaning of why you want that thing. So yeah, that's really helpful. What are some other tips, I guess, that you would say if someone's working within an organization, maybe they're not feeling empowered, maybe they're not feeling like they have the resources to do this work, what are some small ways that they can get started?
Couple ideas. One small way they can get started is to find a buddy. So a big part of doing this work is accountability, and none of it's rocket science, right? It's actually quite fun once you do it, but it's one of those things that can get pushed to the side because lives are busy. And so if you find a buddy who, ideally that's a coach or a peer coach who can be that thought partner, but it could also just be an accountability coach who checks in with you to see if you've done the thing you said you were going to do. That's going to go a long way in helping you to get started. The second thing I'd recommend is enlist your manager. So your manager wants to help you. They want to develop you. They can be your best supporter, but you need to help them to help you. So initiate a conversation, right? And this doesn't have to be scary. It could be as small as saying, hey, Sandhya, I'm starting to think about what I want from my career. Could we have a conversation about, what my future could look like in this company? Or it could be more specific. You could say, I've been doing some self-reflection, and one of the skills that I really want to build over the next year is public speaking. Could we have a conversation about opportunities for me to do more public speaking in my role? And just by bringing them in, it lets them know that you're thinking about your career development. So they probably have to wake up a little bit and know that they need to help you with that. It guides them on how they can help you with that. And it makes them feel like they're part of this process, and that it's a collaboration between the two of you to help you design your career.
In the work that I do with teams, I often say this is like, if you can tell your manager exactly what you need or exactly how they can help you, it's quite possibly one of the best gifts that you can give them, because it's easy to act on a request. And especially if you're tying it back to a win-win for the company, right? Or a win-win for you as their employee and your well-being. But when they don't know, they don't know, they can't guess at what you need. And so they're oftentimes, just because we're humans, we give people that work for us what we think they need based on what we maybe want or the way that we would like to be managed. And so the more we can have the language to describe what it is that I need from you that's different than what you might assume I need from you, it's so helpful in career development and day-to-day just working relationships and everything.
It's also a big part of storytelling, to bring it back to that topic, because a really common thing is that people go to their managers and they say, I want a promotion. I want the next level. And of course, everyone wants a promotion. There's no surprise there. but managers often aren't equipped to help you in that moment with that promotion for a host of reasons that we could get into. But if instead you go to your manager and you say, I want to work on improving my public speaking skills, that's something concrete that they can help you with, that they're going to be excited to help you with, because it's much more fun than just helping you to get a promotion. And chances are it will in turn help you to get that promotion. But you need to explain why it is that you're interested in that, and come up together with a plan to improve it. And then, maybe later weave that into your storytelling for why you deserve a promotion.
What's next for Crew? Where are you in the phases of growth? What are you focused on right now as an organization? And then we'll get to you as a person.
So Crew is in this really exciting moment where we actually started as a consumer-focused company. We were helping individuals to design fulfilling careers. And recently, we pivoted to selling our career design platform and group coaching programs into companies. And we did that because we had inbound interest from companies who were saying, hey, we have this really big problem. We need a modern approach to career development, and coming to us for support with that. And so we are now working with our first few corporate customers and seeing just how impactful it is to support employees with group coaching and career design, especially at key career moments like employee onboarding or becoming a new manager, when people need even more career development guidance. So next for Crew is continuing to work with corporations and building out what these offers are, tackling new career moments, supporting different kinds of employees. Recently, we have expanded from supporting just office workers to now supporting field workers at a construction company with career design. So with each customer, we have kind of a new type of employee or a new career moment that we're learning how to support within an organization.
That's great. I think the breaking of the boundaries around there's a lot of flexibility when you work from home on Zoom all day, but there's not a lot of flexibility when you're out in the field, you're building something or, working on a railway or something like that. So I think that that's really such a cool application and kind of showing the possibilities in career and career design.
It's incredibly impactful to see how a group coaching program and working on just one career design activity can open people's minds to the possibilities at their company and get them thinking about setting themselves up for success in their roles. So, for example, we're working with a construction company on their employee onboarding. So we've designed this program called the First 90 Days on the Job, and it's a career design group coaching program that supports new hires as they onboard and navigate those first 3 months. It helps them to connect with employees across the organization so they build out their support system and get to learn about other teams and groups. And it gets them thinking about their strengths, their interests, their personal board of advisors, their vision for their first year at the company, so that they are focused on playing to their strengths, setting themselves up for success, and telling that story to their new teams.
That's great. And then what about you? What has the journey been like for you in terms of starting with an idea you felt really passionate about and starting to build a company around it, and now leading an organization and a small but mighty team doing this work? What's stuck out to you about your journey?
This has been the hardest and the most fulfilling thing that I have ever done in my career. And I think, it's been an exercise in humility, because you are constantly learning and making mistakes and fixing them quite quickly. So you have to get really comfortable with failure and with, continuing to move forward and learning. It's also been such a confidence booster as I've seen myself take on new skills and, build something from scratch. I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I actually never thought I would found a company. I just saw a problem that I really cared about solving. And through a very iterative design thinking inspired approach, built this company through different stages, and am now seeing just how much impact we can have and how many lives we can touch with what we're doing, which has motivated me throughout this journey. And I couldn't be more motivated today to keep bringing crew and career design to more employees at more companies.
I wonder if you've experienced it in the same way that I have, that there are moments where I kind of might question what I'm doing or have a down day where it's like, this is really hard. And sometimes those moments are the exact times when like a client will reach back out after they've gotten a new job and talk about the work that we did together. Or there's, some kind of moment of validation around like this work is really meaningful and is changing lives. And I wonder how those moments have played out for you.
Yes. Some of those have been big moments, like hearing from one of my employees that this job really turned her career around. She had been in a rut. I had no idea when I brought her on board. And she told me one day that this, invigorated her. It pulled her out of her rut. It inspired her around her career going forward, and that this little company was giving her the fulfillment she had been searching for. There's also, I'm so lucky that we touch people's lives and careers every day at Crew. And so we're getting constant feedback from the employees that we're working with on what they're seeing from these sessions. And so anytime I'm having a bit of a dip myself, I can look at the feedback that's coming in from employees and even our coaches too, and just read, little snippets or quotes about how, a conversation that they had in their crew showed them that they're not alone in that hard thing that they were facing at work, and that actually everybody feels this way, and how connected they now feel to their crew and their company because of the conversation they had in their group session that day. So there's so many little pieces of feedback that remind me that what we're doing is really important.
Yeah, you're on the right path. I'm super excited about what you're doing on a scalable level to help people design careers that are fulfilling. And you mentioned this before, but it's one of the top things that people are looking for in companies. And even more so with Gen Z that we're seeing is going to be, a quarter of the workforce as soon as next year, that seeing growth opportunities, having kind of some clarity or a clearly defined way to grow with a company is going to just continue to become more and more important. So congratulations on all the progress that you've made so far. And I can't wait to see where you all go. But thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to talk about an important topic like this with you.
What a great conversation. This episode was really all about how you can own your career and design it the way that you want. And of course, if you work for yourself like me, there's so much more autonomy to do these things. But in this episode, we really talked about tons of ideas, even for those within large organizations, to learn more about what they want, to take steps to move closer to it. Mollie shared the 4-part model that Crew uses, and we'll drop a link in the show notes to show that visual. To recap, it starts with knowing thyself, both doing your me search and then interpreting that knowledge as it moves into taking action, really ideating around how you can apply this new insight that you have about yourself into your career, and experimenting, finding ways to test things out in real time. And all along the way, you're crafting your career stories as you connect the dots. Now, I'm going to share a book that I'm currently reading, and by reading, I mean listening to on Audible. But it's by author Herminia Ibarra. She's a researcher, a professor, a faculty member before at Harvard Business School and London Business School. And the book is called Working Identity. Now, it's all about making career transitions and how our identity often plays a big role in that. How we can often get tied to one version of ourselves or not see how much we actually change or how our identities can evolve. It's got a lot of stories from people who have made big career pivots, and there's some practical exercises that you can do too. Now, one last thing that I want to share with you is if you take one thing away from this episode, It's really all about empowerment. You and only you own your career. And owning your career path is all about empowering yourself. So I want to leave you with 4 key ways that you can empower yourself in your career. 1, you can empower yourself by embracing the idea that you get to have a career that you love. And you can leverage the tools that you have to help you design it your way. You'll never know what's possible unless you ask the questions or you challenge your own assumptions. 2, you can empower yourself by learning about yourself and understanding what drives you and what you're great at on a deeper level. This is your duty to yourself, to know yourself. 3, you can empower yourself by finding small and accessible ways to take action. Run little experiments or dive into special projects that might help you make decisions on which direction you want to go. And last but definitely not least, you can empower yourself by enrolling others in the process. It's on you to share how you work best and how you can contribute. It's on you to ask for help and to help others by knowing yourself better. You can help them help you. And you can ask for insight from others or find out about opportunities that you may never have seen before.